Welcome into episode 248 of the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball and recruiting podcast on the growing KSR Podcast Network. Sources Say is, as always, presented by our good friends at Justice Dental. Stressed about the big game, or were you stressed about the big game? Take advantage of their special offer for KSR listeners and protect your teeth from clenching and grinding for a limited time. They are offering 20% off bite guards and discounted therapeutic Dysport injections. Click the link in our show notes to schedule your free consultation. Offer ends April 4th. I am your host, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio. I would say I'm very happy to be hosting this show, but unfortunately I'm not, because it is a sad day. We are driving home from Greensboro, North Carolina. Sad, again, another road trip home, Stephen, where we're not very happy, but had to take my trusty road trip partner, Stephen Peake, as I've said many times on this show, the most passionate UK fan I know personally, and our go-to videographer who is getting this little setup going as we're driving back home to Kentucky. Stephen, again, I'm sorry that it has to come to this, and I wish I could just get you on for a fun show where we're excited and talking about, oh, let's book our flight to New York City, and man, I can't wait to stay in Times Square. Oh, Madison Square Garden is going to be amazing. I wish we could be doing that, but unfortunately that's just not the reality today on this Monday afternoon.
I was really excited about getting a return trip to New York City. The first one was a fun trip, not a fun game. I was really looking forward to it, and I kind of thought in the second half, I started thinking that, oh my gosh, we're gonna get back and immediately have to get either back on the road or get a flight to New York City. I really believed it was happening, and it's weird because I don't know. Don't listen to me. I'm really pessimistic, and you know that. I like to expect the worst and hope for the best. It's not the best way to go through your life, but it's just. And the whole day I kind of thought that Kentucky probably wasn't going to win, just because of the way the season has gone. Not because I thought Kansas State was world beaters, and I certainly didn't expect Reeves and Toppin to play like that. I thought, though, up 8 in the second half, I thought we would be driving back and we would be giddy. And we're now getting ready to enter the state of Kentucky. We're coming back with an L. Disappointing.
Kentucky loses in the second round. We get a very happy, optimistic, we got the monkey off of our back after the win over Providence on Friday. They followed up with a 75-69 loss to the 3-seed Kansas State Wildcats to get knocked out. Another year that we unfortunately do not get the chance to advance. It's a season of what ifs, and man, how close were we to this, and why can't we just get consistency across the board? For whatever reason, the season of ups and downs, like almost this game was to a T, just how we've been feeling all year long about. I think I even said on the last show that we did that, well, you know what you're going to get out of Jacob Toppin, you know what you're going to get out of Antonio Reeves, you know what you're going to get out of Oscar Tshiebwe, as long as you get Cason Wallace, CJ Frederick, or Chris Livingston, one of those three, I feel good about Kentucky's chances. You get CJ to finally make a shot from three. Cason Wallace plays out of his mind, one of his best games as a Wildcat. Chris Livingston plays, for my money, the best game as a Kentucky Wildcat. But these stable forces that we've seen all season long that have done really, really, really good things, especially in the back half of the season, they come up short, combined 2 for 22 for the Kentucky Wildcats. And as you said, Stephen, an 8-point lead in the second half ends up being a 6-point loss. So just a season of inconsistencies, striking at the worst time.
So can we go back to like the first half where Kansas State shot, what were they, 0 for 12 or something like that from 3? It was, and there was a moment. Well, let's go back to like the first 4 minutes. It's 6-3, and it felt like it was 6-3 for like most of my life. Like the score never changed, and Kansas State kept missing shots, and you just thought, man, if Kentucky can get a couple buckets and just get this. Do you remember when Kansas State, last time they played them, Kentucky got down 13-1, and although Kentucky did come back and take the lead, it felt 13-1 just felt like almost insurmountable. I think if Kentucky just could have pushed that lead, obviously if they got a few more points, but man, it's just the whole season, like you said, that the inconsistencies. I mean, there was a time in the game where Kentucky couldn't be stopped. I mean, they couldn't stop Kansas State either, but Kentucky couldn't be stopped. But when Kansas State didn't score, Kentucky didn't score. When Kentucky started scoring, Kansas State started scoring. Why? Why was that the case? And I think one of the things that frustrated me the most was when Kentucky would get a bucket. I'll just be honest. I didn't see a lot of the game, especially the second half, because I was walking the concourse because I was nervous. And I was getting ready to do our post-game stuff, but I was also just walking the concourse nervous. But I was listening to the PA. I could see the game. I'd hear basket by Wallace. And 3 seconds later, I hear basket by Noel. And I'm like, how? They're literally just beating, I look at the replay, they're just beating him, straight line drive, right, get the ball out of the basket, go, score. And I'm like, how are we not getting back? Did Kentucky have a problem with that all year? I don't think that they did. But you follow the team a little more closely. You actually watch the games, pay attention to them. I'm more just like a fan, just taking in the experience of being nervous in March. But was that something that happened all season, or was that new? Like, what happened?
Not to that extent, and I think, defensive breakdowns, just however they were coming, and I really did think Kentucky had a great defensive game plan to start the game. They were clearly trying to trap and blitz Marquise Noel and make him as uncomfortable as possible, and try to take him out of the game entirely as a scorer, and it worked briefly, and then he decided to turn into prime white chocolate Jason Williams, and becomes a playmaking nightmare, and that starts, forces a shift on the Kentucky defense, and then opens up the door for him to absolutely just cook as a scorer. Made shot after shot after shot, big shot. When you have Antonio Reeves start the game, I mean, as cold as he possibly can, started out 0 for 14 and 0 for overall, and 0 for 9 overall from 3. I mean, yeah. At that point, it is what he had scored 22 points a game over the last 6 games. Had emerged as Kentucky's go-to bucket getter. We've just seen him go for 37 down in Fayetteville. I mean, that's fluky stuff. That is absolute fluky stuff. And then Jacob Toppin, he goes individually 1 for 7 overall, 0 for 2 from 3. I mean, those two have been probably Kentucky's 2 most consistent presences overall outside of Oscar Tshiebwe, and they weren't able to make the big shots that Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson and the Kansas State Wildcats were able to make. And I guess it's just kind of a sobering reality that when push came to shove, the better team ended up winning, and the season will end with Kentucky probably finishing where they deserve to finish. There wasn't a magical run. There wasn't they struggled all year long at these certain things, but if they fix them right at the right time, they already have the offense. But what if they, fix a couple things defensively? Will they be able to overcome at the wrong moment? Kentucky's biggest struggles came to bite them in the butt, and unfortunately, the better team won, and it's a pretty tough reality, I think.
Well, okay, so I don't want to get too far off track here, but it's something I was thinking about on our trip back, that Kentucky basketball is in this weird funk, nothing to do with coaching, X's and O's, all this. I mean, it does, but what I'm kind of talking about is from 2010 to 2015, when Kentucky needed a bucket. Now, take West Virginia out of that, maybe take UConn out of that, but more times than not, Brandon Knight against Princeton, Brandon Knight versus West Virginia, Brandon Knight versus Ohio State, DeAndre Liggins versus North Carolina. You can go on and on from 2012, 2014, 2015. And then 2015, Notre Dame misses a shot. And then Wisconsin, the next game, hits that step back 3 that gives them the lead. And from that point on, I felt like every big shot in the tournament happened against Kentucky, as opposed to Aaron Harrison beyond belief moments that we had in 2014. All the good luck that we had, I guess Willie Cauley-Stein made a big play to get up in the Notre Dame player's face and make him, miss the 3. But the way the luck is going right now, if that same play happened in 2023, that shot just goes in. It feels like those were tough shots that Kansas State hit. That last 3 that pushed the lead to 5. I did watch that play, and it was going up, and I was like, I can't believe they're going to hit another one. I just couldn't. I was like, the odds of them hitting, I don't know how many 3s they hit towards the end of the game, but it was 3. I don't know if it was 4. Man, it's just like you said, a fluky thing. Reeves scored 37 points just a couple weeks ago. And he goes 1 for 10. Last year against St. Peter's, Grady goes 1 for 9. And St. Peter's hits every big shot. I've rewatched that game because I'm a psychopath and I love feeling the pain, I guess. But I've watched that game and I'm like, what else could you have done defensively? They were just throwing up shots and they were going in. What could Kentucky have done, in your opinion, differently in those final, let's say, 4 minutes? I think that was when Lance Ware got the dunk, put Kentucky at 4. What did you see? Was it just them hitting insane shots, or could Kentucky have done anything different?
No, Marquise Noel is Kemba Walker reincarnated. I mean, one of those dudes that they had been cold all game long. The shots that they had, they had clean looks all game long and weren't making them. But when they got contested looks, I mean, 4 feet behind the 3-point line, fadeaway, that Keontae Johnson step back fadeaway 3 from the right wing, like shots like that's March. Like that's March Madness, where Kentucky was a hair off. If I go back to that beginning, the couple early sequences with Antonio Reeves, a dude that just went nuclear three days ago, 2 days before this last game, where he gets five threes at the same gym, same goals, same everything, rim adjusted or not. He made 5 of them on the same floor, and then he takes his first 2 and they rim out. I mean, touch every single inch of the cylinder, and it just barely rims out. And he talked about it after the game. It was like, yeah, I just kind of knew that it wasn't going to be my day after the fact. And you just think, if those 2 shots had fallen, I mean, they were just a speck off.
Yeah.
If those 2 had fallen, is the whole trajectory of the game different? What is the narrative? How does that impact momentum and all those things? Because truthfully, I do think Kentucky controlled for a lot of the game. They did lead for the majority of the game, but I thought they controlled pretty much the entire time outside of the last minute of the first half. It's just kind of one of those, it is what it is type deals where I don't know, man. I just think if Antonio Reeves gets one of those 2 early threes to fall, that the whole storyline of the game changes.
It's like kind of what I said to people about Grady last year. Like, if he has a bad game, Kentucky wins. Like, if he just has a bad game, not his worst game. Like, if Antonio Reeves has a game he would love to forget, then, and not just the worst game he's ever played at Kentucky, then Kentucky wins. And I'm not putting it on Reeves. Like, he's the reason they were playing on Sunday. Him and Toppin. People kind of going after them a little bit, as being seniors, that maybe, why don't they hit these shots? Look, like you said, you're talking like, how badly did he miss? Like, it really does become a game of inches. And he had a 3 in the corner in the second half, all by himself. Kaysen got it to Toppin. Toppin, he was like, one more pass. Reeves is wide open. I thought that was going down. Everyone stood up, had the 3 ready to go, and he missed it. I couldn't believe he missed that one. That's when I thought we were in trouble then. I thought Kentucky was in trouble because Oscar just missed the front end of a bonus. Kentucky's 8-point lead advantage. The game was tied, I think, at that point. And credit, though, Kentucky and Kaysen Wallace. There was a couple times I thought that earlier in the season, they fold. I mean, I thought the game might have been over when they went up 5 in the second half, just because of the way this team plays in the second half when they're behind. That they don't really, they struggle coming back. They, that's when guys get even more tight and shots stop going in, and they battle back. Kaysen Wallace put this team on his shoulders. You got a chance to talk to him in the locker room. I didn't really get to see him. What was his attitude and mood like?
Very, very, very blunt, very short. Like, I think as frustrated and as put off as I've ever heard, and he's always been very short-winded. So, getting drawn out responses is always, it's always a surprise. But you could tell that he was really shaken up. He was really hurt because, that's a dude that you cannot, you can't blame him for the loss. He was absolutely terrific. He goes for 21 points on 9 of 11 shooting, 1 for 1 from 3, 2 for 2 at the line, 9 rebounds, 4 assists. He had 5 turnovers, but a lot of those came in the first couple minutes. 2 steals in 34 minutes. He was absolutely sensational from start to finish.
He only had like 1 turnover in the second half then, I guess. I think he had 4 at halftime. Him and Oscar both. What is it? What's the deal with, Oscar Tshiebwe? You wouldn't trade him for almost anybody. But passing, every time they went to double team him, I was just like, man, please get rid of him before that double team comes. It's been an issue all season, right? I don't know if coaches are telling him, hey, catch the ball and let's move it around, because they're double teaming you. They can only have 5 guys on the floor. That means somebody's open. So maybe kick it back out, move it around, try to find the open guy, make the defense move. I felt like Calipari did talk about this a lot all season. Guys are holding onto the ball, or they're just dribbling it, or we got to move the ball. And we saw the ball movement get better. I pointed out to some people about like how the ball movement, even in the Vanderbilt game where they lost. What is it? Oscar Tshiebwe is like going to be one of the best players of the Cal era, but you were just listening to something I thought was really interesting. Is it okay to kind of talk about what you were listening to just a minute ago about Oscar, and can you win 6 games with him?
Yeah, I was listening to Game Theory, I think, with Sam Vecini with The Athletic, who just, kind of went in on that fact that he's kind of an anchoring center, that you can't bring him out, outside the paint. And, passing is poor. And I think the issue with Oscar is, in that type of moment, he feels the need to do everything by himself, because I think he saw, okay, well, nobody else around me is making the big shots. Kaysen is driving and scoring at will, and if I can't do it, then definitely we have at least Kaysen making plays happen. But when you have Antonio Reeves and Jacob Toppin clearly off their game, clearly missing shots, I think that panic almost kind of sets in for Oscar, where he's like, oh shoot, this team is going to lose unless I take the game over. And it almost backfires, because he does put up 25-point stat lines, 18 rebounds, 8 of 13 shooting, 9 of 11 from the line. He was terrific, like in terms of scoring, pure domination on the glass and all of those things. Absolutely. But it's the timeliness of the turnovers and the costly decisions that just kind of just move the needle just a hair the other directions, and it sucks. And you don't want a guy with the legacy that Oscar Tshiebwe has and has put so much into this university. Like, Oscar Tshiebwe is not to blame for that loss. No. But you can say that when, the panic that he saw when everything else wasn't working, and his need to, put the ball in his hands and take matters into his own hands, that's where things, you can kind of tell, started getting shaky a little bit. And I mean, credit to Kansas State, because that's exactly what their game plan was. They admittedly did not think that the Providence scout was very, very good. They wanted to play, similarly to what Vanderbilt did well in both of their wins over the Kentucky Wildcats. Force turnovers, make them feel as uncomfortable as possible, and force them to make shots. And Kentucky did not make the shots necessary to win, but they also turned the ball over. I mean, just way too many turnovers. 16 overall, 11 in the first half is just not going to cut it. That's where the momentum flipped. And again, 11. To Kentucky's credit, they did do a great job of bouncing back. The energy and the pace and the tone, everything was so great to start that second half. And then Marquise Noel happened and Keontae Johnson happened. It's, turnovers had to be better. And it did not help that you did not have Xavier Wheeler in there to, at least when things were going south with Case and Wallace, and you had to put a Duthiero in, and there were times Antonio Reeves was the primary ball handler, and CJ Frederick at times. I mean, it would be really nice to have that guy, that just complementary piece to just settle a little bit and be the breath of fresh air, and complement what Marquise Noel does, a 5'8" point guard that is the kind of the pace setter, the change of pace guy that we've talked about on the show, till we're blue in the face as to what Xavier does. Well, that's literally who Marquise Noel is for Kansas State. I would have loved to see that back and forth between those two, them both getting up in each other's grill and, really guarding each other 94 feet. I think that would have been a blast, but unfortunately we didn't get that opportunity.
The Xavier Wheeler story is just going to be something everybody's going to, talk about. I really, really thought he could have helped this team at several points during the season. I thought the Georgia game, Caston picked up 2 quick fouls. This past game, the Vanderbilt game in Bridgestone. So, we talked to him on Thursday. It sounded like he was going to go. You try to read through some of the stuff. There's coach speak, there's locker room talk, there's it's a totally different dialect, not dialect, but it's a totally different language. You almost have to interpret it, what is the truth behind all of this? And you just, the way that he was talking on Thursday, where he laughed, was when somebody, I think Kyle Tucker asked him, people thought you quit the team, and he went ha, oh, you think that's the narrative? That's what people are saying? It sounded like he was gonna play. And then he was, I guess he woke up on Friday 70%, 75%, I think is what Cal said. As a fan, it's just, it's another mystery that is just frustrating. Because here's the thing, I'm not saying, because we don't know. He could have been hurt this whole time. He got an injury that Calipari called a minor injury, and then he was out the rest of the season. And it's so weird. And it's all right, who's not being upfront with us? You don't need to tell us every detail. And it's certainly not the media, because the media is just the conduit for the fans. That's just the middleman for the fans. But even still, the fans don't have to know everything. I think though, it just creates a more toxic environment for Xavier Wheeler, because people just didn't really know. There was no specifics on injuries, no specifics. You broke the news about what the surgery was on KSR Plus, I think. But even then, from the team, we're not getting, as a fan, you're not getting specifics. And then people just kind of fill that void with whatever it is they think it could be. And I'm sure Xavier Wheeler said he wasn't on social media. I don't know that I believe that. I know his Twitter is still active and that he's on it. He's probably seen fans say some pretty terrible things to him. And that's so not fair. And it's not fair to him also, because if you thought he quit, well, Calipari's saying that they're all acting like he's going to play. So it's not fair to Wheeler. The entire thing was not fair to him. I've been talking about Xavier Wheeler, I think, all season, because I really thought he could help. That Tennessee game, after I left that game, I thought, man, what a great teammate. He was up on the bench cheering for his guys, but we saw what Casey Wallace needed to be the point guard. I, as a fan, really, you don't need to be 100% transparent, but you do need to make Calipari and the coaching staff, I felt like or somebody within the program knew what those rumors were and could have addressed them. And the fact that it wasn't, I think, made it worse for Xavier. I think the fact that Cal really forced him to play in some of these games when it was clear that the lineup that was going to work, how that Benny lineup ended up doing. I think people knew what the lineup needed to be, and people, when they booed, I mean, maybe some of them were stupid and they were booing Xavier, but I think they were booing Calipari for how much he was playing him. He was a role player that was, getting starter minutes. You look at what Saul Smith went through, and he was playing over guys that maybe he shouldn't have been playing over, and he still had some really good games. The game against USD in the tournament, he had one of his best games when they lost to Brian Scalabrine. He got a lot of stuff said to him, a lot. That's the kind of the attacks that Cal talks about. You're the point guard at Kentucky. That's like being the quarterback at Alabama, the quarterback at Tennessee. It comes with a lot. But when it's good, you're the man. You're a rock star. You're on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and it's great. There's a reason why you want to take that role. I don't know, as just a fan, again, I'm an idiot. I don't follow the team like Jack does. So I'm just throwing stuff out here. I'm kind of just gauging your reactions also. So your poker face is pretty good. Do you think that Cal kind of did him an injustice, or is this just something the fans took and just because we're crazy and just kind of blew it out of proportion?
Um, it's complicated. I do think that emotions played a part in all of it, and we're definitely going to get more into it. And the season just ended, and there's going to be a lot of talk about how things unfolded and individual decisions like that, and obviously the Xavier Wheeler saga, and when he inevitably puts his name in the transfer portal and makes his decision, as to what his future holds and all of that. Like, there's a lot of conversation to get into, but I do think that he was hurt by all that, and I don't think he was worried necessarily about booze had he been there for senior night. I think it had more to do with, I don't want to hear their cheers. I've heard their boos in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want the standing ovation. And I do think just privately that was a part of it. The surgery was a very real one, and it was a very serious one, and it needed to happen quickly. Could there have been a day difference? That stuff I don't know, but
or a video,
a video, a statement. I do think that could have been handled differently, and I said this on the show. I think that's going to be a decision that he ultimately regrets one day. I do think that no matter what happened this season, no matter how fans treated him for better or worse, and I do think it was a very vocal minority. I do think that 95% of Kentucky fans treated him the exact way he deserved, as a leader, as somebody that did a lot of really good things for this university and deserved to be ultimately supported and loved and cherished. And I think that's why when he did come out for senior day, when he did not come out for senior day, then Ellen Calipari came out in the number 2 jersey, that there was a standing ovation, and there was an absolute roar from the fan base, because 95% of those fans, that is their genuine feel for Xavier, and that's where it sucks, because it sucks that there was so much toxic behavior surrounding Xavier, and I do think that a lot of it was not justified, in the sense that it was okay to want Kaysen to play more and have an expanded role, but not at the expense of saying Xavier stinks. He needs to go on somewhere, throw him in the trash, and like that. That was not necessarily, it was not productive behavior on either side. And I do think that both sides will end up regretting how all of it unfolded, because that unfortunately is the lasting legacy. We're not going to remember the 20-point breakthrough performance against North Carolina last year, and the times that he was the straw that stirred the drink, and the starting point guard of a number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. Like, big picture, like, that's who he was for this team last year. He was a winning point guard that did do a lot of really good things. He had his flaws. He was a turnover-prone point guard that was not a great shooter. You had to play around him and fit his style of play a whole heck of a lot better. And I don't think that this team, especially early on when Antonio wasn't making shots and CJ was off and on, and he needs to have shooters around him, and he needs to play with a style of play and a pace. We talked earlier, what did Kentucky finish in tempo? 215?
It was
something
bad.
like that. This season,
yeah.
I think the Big 12, just speaking out loud here, and I have already had some conversations, assuming he does decide to put his name in the portal, I think Kansas State might be a fit for him, because I do think Marquise Noel will end up leaving and going pro there, and I don't think that that's a bad fit for him. There are some recruiting ties with him there, and who Xavier was committed to at Texas Tech or Texas A&M when he was first in high school, is now the lead assistant at Kansas State. So that is a fit. I do think Texas A&M will be highly interested. I guess guys with prior connections to him they were huge fans of his game in the past. They're still fans of his game, and I do think that there will be connections there at some point down the line. I do think that there is a role for him somewhere. He's going to start for some college team next year. I think he's going to be a damn good one. So it sucks the legacy is what it is, and the last time that we ever got to talk to him ended up being that Thursday afternoon where he said, "I'm ready to help this team go on a run. I'm available to play. I feel good. I want to be." He told the story about the last time he was in this situation. He tore his meniscus as a senior in high school, missed the majority of that year, came back in time for the playoffs, and led his Houston Christian school to a state championship in Texas. And he kind of threw that narrative out there, and that was the storyline of, you know, it's my senior year, out for a long time due to injury, and I get the chance to return for the playoffs, return for the NCAA tournament, and help lead my team to a national championship. The storyline was great, but unfortunately the lasting memory will be that, and then the next morning, next afternoon, Cal saying that he's only at 70 to 75%, going through pregame warm-ups, shooting around as normal in full uniform, and then not playing a single second in 2 straight games. So it sucks. I will appreciate Xavier for what he brought to the table at this school, and it's unfortunate that it ended the way that it did, and I do think that he would have been a huge help in that game, but now the situation is what it is. Stephen, I want to, you were in there in the locker room with me, and I want to just kind of paint that picture, because that was a memory that I think I'll have for the rest of my life.
Have you done one of those before?
Not in an NCAA tournament game.
Okay. I was curious because you said that, and I wondered, because I know you've covered the team for a while, but of course, COVID and everything had been different, so I didn't know if that was the case, but yeah.
So the media floods into the locker room, and again, there's a lot of people on social media saying, I hate that the media goes into the locker room after that. We don't want, like, I mean, it's great for big wins and, you know, the excitement and all that stuff, but it is tragic. Like, it is a terrible, terrible thing walking into their home and their personal space following misery, you know? And it's not immediately after the game ends. There are some people going, give them a couple minutes to cool off. It's like 30 minutes after the game ends where they've already cooled off. So the emotion and reaction that we get as is already the kind of the let the dust settle a little bit beforehand. So just keep that in mind. We walk in there, the floodgates open, and Oscar Sheboy is turned away from his teammates. He's facing his locker by himself in dead silence. The entire room is dead silent, but him especially, never seen him like that. And the time starts ticking, and it's like 30 seconds pass, a minute passes, 2 minutes pass, 3 minutes pass, and I mean, we're
in silence. Like, the media is just behind him, silent.
Yeah, we're like, okay, do we tell him that we're here? Do we say, hey Oscar, how you feeling? Like, no, you just sit there, shut up, and let him have his moment. But that moment just kind of kept lingering, and it was like, man, this is really uncomfortable, and I hated it. Ugo stands up and he goes over, and again, unbelievably powerful gesture on Ugo's part. The guy who averaged 6.9 minutes a game, hasn't, I think, played 10 minutes plus since one time since the start of the new year, since 2023 or something. Dude played no minutes. The guy ahead of him, his role model, his mentor, from Africa himself, and just kind of learning how to be a college basketball star from Africa. Like, it's a really cool story. He goes over and puts his arm on Oscar and whispers in his ear, Oscar, these people want to hear you. They need to talk to you. You need to tell them, you're the voice that they need to hear right now. Not the media, but who the cameras are, people are watching through the camera. The media outlets, you guys that are watching this and listening to this, it's for you. Oscar needed to calm the fan base down and say something to it, and it was like just a really powerful moment, because almost immediately afterward, Oscar stands up, turns around, sits down, kind of takes a deep breath, and answers questions for 25 straight minutes, no matter how difficult they were. What's your lasting legacy going to be? I don't know. I wish I could, I feel sorry. I want to tell Big Blue Nation sorry for not providing enough for this school. And I came back to win a night, taking ownership of
and he played great.
Year. That was like, dude.
He made some turnovers we talked about, but he played great.
You do not need to apologize for anything. Like, we need to apologize to you for not giving you the national championship that you deserve. Like, I felt sick. It was a sick feeling of just numbness and emptiness and pure emotions. We go over and talk to CJ Frederick, and he's talking about the possibility of hanging it up and how, his body is just you know, breaking down. He's gone through so much, and yeah, he doesn't regret anything that's happened over the course of his 5 years, but damn, it's like a sobering reality for him, especially because like this could be the end of the road for him just in basketball. Like probably not going to go pro, not, you know, how much left does he have to give the game?
Yeah.
He has eligibility left, and he said he acknowledged that, but it was just a really tough feel and emotion in that locker room, and you got to experience that as well. You talked to different players, just your thoughts as well.
So yeah, it was my first time going into a losing locker room. People on Twitter, I mean, like, that said that you all shouldn't be in there. Look, well, I'll tell you, as a fan, as somebody who grew up as a fan, I didn't want to go into a Kentucky losing locker room. I knew it was going to be bad. We've all seen the video of like Monk and Fox and Bam and I know John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins were like inconsolable after they lost to West Virginia. So I kind of knew what to expect. I've been in losing locker rooms before, not one where I'm emotionally invested as well. Makes it just a little bit different, and not for an NCAA tournament. Sorry, I keep getting phone calls. I was talking to Antonio Reeves, and I felt so bad for him. Like we said, his stat line was bad. I mean, you can't really sugarcoat it. It was bad. But he played so well all season. He single-handedly, for the most part, I don't know single-handedly, but they don't win a lot of games without him. Especially like Arkansas, they don't win that game. They may not win the Providence game without him. And I really, really did enjoy watching him play. I love his jumper, but you're right. We got there about 20 so minutes after the game ended, maybe 20 to 30 minutes. But you've seen everybody with the red eyes. CJ Frederick was maybe the most like tore up, and you know, what an unlucky season it had been for CJ. I felt so bad for him. Of course, felt bad for Oscar because, you know, he felt like Oscar was that guy who just took his heart and put it on the floor for you. You know, like, I think CJ to play through what he played through is another one of those guys. I'm not saying that anybody didn't give 100%, I'm not suggesting that, but just that CJ, you know, if you ever crack your rib, go and try to play not 40 minutes, you try to play in a high-level college basketball game and just see how uncomfortable it would be. And not only that, but he had the finger and the ankle from last year and everything else, and the pressure, and I had a moment as I was leaving, and Antonio was standing by the doorway, and you know, I just became a fan for a second, and I didn't know if I'd ever talk to Antonio Reeves ever again, and I told him that, you know, it was like, hey man, it was you know, it's probably unprofessional, but I just said it was really fun watching you play. I really enjoyed watching you play. You had a great year, and thank you for the memories. And again, probably unprofessional, but I just, you see them as kids in that moment. Like, you almost, as an adult, I'll be 33 on Friday. That was gonna be an awesome birthday, by the way, to watch on Thursday, watch Kentucky beat Michigan State, and then get prepared for Tennessee and enjoy my birthday in New York City. That was gonna be great, unfortunately. But again, I'm gonna be 33. I almost just like want to like give some of the kids a hug. Like, I just feel like they need an adult. It's just like they just look like little kids. Some of them. They're 22. They're not kids. Some of them are not kids, but some of them are. I mean, Kaysen was pissed. Chris Livingston was pissed, but again, these guys, like, you just forget until it's like that raw emotion, and then you're like, oh, I remember when I was 18. Like, oh God, like, could you imagine, like, a bunch of adults coming in, you know, grown men and women to ask you about a game that you played poorly in, and you let down an entire Commonwealth. I mean, geez, man, like, you talk about like pressure in the game, like, that's tough, but like having to do that, I don't know how you felt. I felt kind of gross being there. It's part of our job. We have to do it. And I think it does humanize them. So it's a net positive for the players, because now we're talking about how, you know, these are real people. They're not robots, as Cal likes to say. That was a tough experience. I likened it to a funeral. Like, you just didn't talk. You had to be respectful. Everybody was experiencing loss. I'm going to be working on a project over the off season on psychology of sports fans. The author is a professor at Murray State. He wrote the book Psychology of Sports Fans. He says that losing a game, like an elimination game, will give you those same exact feelings as if you've lost a loved one, which sounds insane, but obviously that goes away, and as you turn the page and, you know, there are things bigger than basketball and you move on and you play next season or whatever. But like, that was really tough to experience, and I know that there's been worse ones, you know, but I think that this team had a path. These guys knew they had a path to the tournament. They kept talking about how much time they had. We kind of joked like, well, how much time do you got? But I got the sense though that when they lost, that they were like, oh,
said going into that funeral, because that was the death of the season.
Yeah, I mean, again, felt terrible for them. I know a lot of them have decisions to make. I think it would be big to get Antonio Reeves back with next year's team. How do you feel about? I tend to disagree with the guy's point that Oscar, you can't win 6 straight games with Oscar. I just think you got to use him in a different way. There was defensively, there were issues. These things are fixable. I think there's a way. You're telling me you can't win 6 straight games with a guy who gets that many rebounds and that many points. And I know there are deficiencies that he had on defense. You can't figure out a way to make that work. I mean, I don't know. I feel like, I don't even know if Calipari wants him to come back. Like, you heard him a lot, especially early, and he did stop doing this. But do you remember the early press conferences when he was like, but I got Oscar. What do you want me to do? I got Oscar.
Yep.
Almost like, I can't do this kind of offense. I have Oscar. I can't play this defense. I have Oscar. Well, I mean, that made me think like, okay, you're acting like the National Player of the Year coming back is a bad thing. Was it a bad thing? Like, were there... First of all, I guess the question I would ask you is like, is there a world where Oscar comes back and plays another year at Kentucky?
I don't see it. I think this was the last hurrah for him. I think the opportunity would be there to come back, and I don't think that Cal would tell him no. But I think then you start getting into, okay, well, what's going to happen with Ugano and Yensa? What's going to happen with Aaron Bradshaw? What's going to happen with Damian Collins? Like, okay, so you're going to take Oscar back, and then Damian Collins, the dude that lost everything this year, you're going to say, well, sorry, bud, we got the National Player of the Year. Figure it out. Hope you enjoy Baylor or Houston or Texas Tech. Go on home and have a nice day.
And do you expect Collins to be back then?
Well, and I don't think it's as simple as that. I'm just more so saying,
right,
making the push for a guy like Oscar who's had his opportunity and you know, every single opportunity that he could have ever dreamed of in Lexington. You know, I just think when push comes to shove, sometimes it's best for a fresh start with people. It's going to be time for a fresh start with Xavier Wheeler. It's going to be a time for a fresh start with, you know, just Jacob Toppin. I'd love another year for Jacob Toppin, but, you know, he's been in college for 4 years and, you know, trying to figure out, am I a pro? What can I do to be a pro? So he needs a fresh start. You know, sometimes it's necessary for certain guys, and I just think Oscar fits that billing almost to a T. And when you have guys like Hugo, who is deserving of an opportunity, he was the only guy on this team that didn't get an opportunity this year. Even Adu Thiero had a bigger opportunity than Oscar did this year. So it's just little things like that again, we'll get into the nitty gritty of all of that when the time comes, and this week will be that time. We'll do the dust is settled, what's going to happen with coaching staff, potential coaching staff changes, the latest on stay or go decisions. There are updates on that. But this show, I think, is about feeling for those kids and that locker room and the emotions that they all felt, because that was a really tough scene, and it was a tough finish of a tough year. This is a team that went through a lot this year as a group, and a lot of stuff that happened that we know publicly, and a lot of things that happened behind the scenes that is not out there in the public, that is deserving of a reality check and is deserving of maybe we shouldn't have been as hard on them in certain circumstances and at different points of the season that I was personally hard on them. Like at the Missouri game, for instance, that was the one that I was like, man, the team chemistry is terrible right now. They don't even look like they like each other. I've never seen a more disconnected group in my life. Well, maybe there's stuff that goes into that. Maybe there's a reason that there's things going on beyond basketball, that really basketball doesn't matter right now and in that individual moment. And that's not an excuse for missed shots or individual things that happen during the game. And that was a game that you go back on, and Kentucky probably does regret going to Columbia and losing in that way. But it's just a big picture issue. There's a lot of stuff that happened with this team
and probably some stuff that we'll never know, because it's none of our business, right? I mean, stuff like stuff that may happen outside of basketball that doesn't happen on the court. Those are things that I'm not even saying that we have a right to know, because I don't think that we do. There are some personal things that may happen with the team that will affect how they play, would certainly affect how you play depending on what it is. This team went through a lot. I mean, it's from the very beginning. I mean, I don't know that anybody in the media really gave much attention to Damian Collins' dad passing away and how much it affected not just him, but everybody. And I really thought Damian Collins was going to have a great year. He looked great in the Bahamas, like everybody did. But also there were moments this year, Florida game maybe, where first half where he hit a few buckets, a few jump shots. I really thought he was going to have a big season, and I don't know that we ever. Now that of course, we talked about how much that affected him, and how much what that has to do to a young kid, and and how sudden everything happened. Calipari, when he first addressed it, you could see the hurt on Cal's face. I just wonder how much. I mean, that's where it started. I mean, and then they had several other things happen along the way, from injuries to season-ending injury. I mean, just all kinds of stuff. And then, on top of that, you're losing games. And on top of that, not just the local media, like national media, that guys who cover the NBA, those people are now, what's wrong with Kentucky? What's wrong with this guy? You've talked to NBA scouts who have been at games, and at that game in particular, that was asking a lot of questions about what's going on with this. This team took on a lot. They called Joe B. Hall's 1978 national championship team like the no fun team. I don't know that this team had a lot of fun. There were highlights. There were some big moments in particular games. Maybe Arkansas might be one of their top moments of the season. But you're right in that they didn't accomplish. There's nothing to they didn't win an SEC tournament, didn't get to the SEC championship game, didn't win the Champions Classic, didn't really win any out-of-conference games of note. At least when we went to London, they won that game, so at least didn't waste that trip. But, I mean, I don't know, man. How much of it, national media, especially, they're not there. A lot of them, they write columns from, 100 miles away or further, and they have no idea maybe some of the hurt that these guys go to. If there's ever a doubt that these players care or not, watch one of those locker rooms from any of the seasons, especially this one. I mean, everybody, they cared. I mean, they were hurt. I mean, I really hope they win it all next year, so I don't have to experience that again. That would be great.
Yeah, that would that sure would be nice. But yeah, it's a tough way to finish, and I feel for these kids. And there is a lot of excitement for next year, and obviously that. But I'm not personally going to kind of throw these kids away in favor of that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not. If Antonio Reeves decides to ultimately go, I'm not going to say, well, at least we got DJ coming in. At least we got Rob Dillingham coming in. Antonio was a hell of a basketball player that brought a lot to this team, that went out in a pretty rough
shooting performance that's going to be something if he does decide to hang it up or go. It would be going pro, not hanging it up completely, but hanging it up in Kentucky. That's going to be a tough legacy thing for him. Just like Kellen Grady losing against St. Peter's on a 1-for-9 shooting performance, and him not having any more eligibility to come back, and stuff like that is tough. And so there will be a time to break down. I'll be at the McDonald's All-American game in 2 weeks. Next week, I think. Yeah, next Tuesday, I will be at the McDonald's All-American game for the open practices and all that stuff. So I get 1 full week, Stephen, before I start having to turn my attention toward that. But for today, at least, appreciate that we get the chance to just say thank you to Oscar Shipway. If it was the last time that we got to see him in a Kentucky uniform, appreciate everything that he brought to the table. CJ Frederick, tough as nails. If he decides to call it a career, that's a dude that played a lot of basketball, that did a lot of good things for two very high profile programs on and off the floor. Antonio Reeves, whatever his decision is, Jacob Toppin, man, his turnaround since that exact Missouri game, his turnaround has been one of the most refreshing and joyous experiences of this job. Just seeing that, kind of it all click for him. That was a really rewarding feeling for him. And shoot, Brennan Canada, a dude that we rarely got to see on the actual basketball floor, but he brought a hell of a lot to the basketball team from a leadership perspective, and in the locker room, and in practice, and behind closed doors in the dorm, and all that stuff. There are a lot of dudes on this team that impacted this program in different ways, and I appreciate all of them. Like you said, I'm glad you got the chance to fanboy a little bit and say thanks for everything, because these all of them have brought a lot to this program, and it did not end the way that they wanted. They wanted to win, just like all of us. It's really disappointing, and there's a lot of stuff to be frustrated about. And again, we'll get to that at a later show. But this one, appreciate this season. It was not necessarily a fun ride. It was a ride with a lot of ups and downs, and a lot of great kids. So, Stephen, let's wrap this show up. We are almost home, thank God.
Yeah.
Back. I would love to be packing up for New York City, but unfortunately, that's just not the reality. But we'll let this one marinate a little bit and turn our attention toward probably one of the busiest off seasons in the Calipari era, if I had to guess, just in terms of turnover and coaching changes and all that stuff. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks.
And I know you're going to get to that in a later show, and I know we got to wrap this one up. It could be a really interesting off season. There's going to be a lot of changes. At least we know for sure roster wise, and we'll see about personnel wise, as far as like coaches and assistant coaches, grad assistants. But I am excited for it. I was listening to the guys today on the radio, and Drew said, I'm not really looking forward to it. He said I will be looking forward to it, and that's kind of how I felt too. Like, right now, it's kind of like, oh, man, how do we get up for a whole other year to get a run in the tournament? But I am excited for it. I mean, I think that, again, you don't want to dismiss what this team did. This team could have rolled over after South Carolina. I thought they were going to. Drew and I went to Tennessee half-heartedly. We didn't even really want to be there because we knew this was going to be a blowout. And it started that way. And man, this team, to go through everything they went through, they finished third in the SEC. After that South Carolina game, did we think they were going to finish third in the SEC? Did we think they were going to be fighting for a 4 or 5 seed? Absolutely not. I mean, I didn't think they were going to make the tournament. I thought maybe they'll reject an NIT bid. I thought after they got done playing that last game in the SEC tournament, they were done. And they were probably going to be playing, they might be playing on Wednesday in the SEC tournament. So what Calipari did, and what this coaching staff did, and what these players did to get better, to fix some things, there were some positives to take away. I want to be mad. As a fan, you want to look for somebody to blame when you lose a game like that. I wanted to be mad at Calipari. Cal should have done something. Somebody should have done something. Why was this guy? They just didn't go in. Good shooters, great shooters. Shots didn't go in. Guys who've been playing their best, shots just didn't go in.
Jacob did fine defensively. I don't know that Antonio killed you defensively. It sucks. It sucks that like you said, we're not packing New York City. But I'm not mad at anybody. I'm not really mad at Cal. I'm not a little bit upset at that referee that wanted to pick a fight with Cal throughout the game.
Yeah, forget that guy.
So, but it is what it is. But excited going to football tomorrow morning, bright and early. We'll be there. So we'll turn the page into a new sport. Baseball team is in the top 25. There's also that.
That is something. It sure is. Yeah. Well, let's go on and get out of here. Unfortunately, it wasn't the happy show we were expecting, but wanting to get some stuff off our chest, and I appreciate you coming on with us, Steven. Where can fans find your work?
On Twitter at Stephen Peake KSR. But I highly recommend going to YouTube, KSR, subscribe. We're going to have all kinds of fun content to put out in this off-season period that I'm excited about. I'm excited to do some really cool projects. So go to YouTube, KSR, Kentucky Sports Radio, subscribe. Try to get us to 20,000 subscribers before the football season. We're at 19,100 something. So, and we would have got there, Jack. If they were in Madison Square Garden next week, we were at 20,000 easy by the end of next week.
Well, we're going to do whatever it takes to get there. We have player decisions, NBA draft, stay or go, coaching staff changes. We got all of that stuff on this specific show, so make sure you stay listening to that. You can find my work personally on KentuckySportsRadio.com, on Twitter at JackPilgrimKSR, and reach out to me via email, jpilgrim@KentuckySportsRadio.com. We will be back at some point here in the next couple of days and really hit reset on everything. We will see you then. The Sources Say podcast is also brought to you by Andy Ludicky and MyPerfectFranchise.net, a franchise consulting company that helps others find franchises that will fit their needs, skill sets, investment requirements, and time commitment constraints. Andy is a super nice, great to chat with guy. Big sports fan, by the way, and we're very excited to continue our partnership with him this year. Andy is an experienced entrepreneur and has been helping others go through the same process that changed his life 10 plus years ago. If you are wanting to find a way out of corporate America or a way to diversify, please reach out to Andy, as he's got a ton of knowledge in this world. And best of all, his services are 100% free to you always. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. You can learn more and contact Andy anytime at www.myperfectfranchise.net.